Alright, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rachakodesh. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. Alright, this is the brother Barbazal here with a lesson, and Lord willing, let's edify. Alright. So the title of this lesson is going to be something along the lines of the importance of being in the right spirit, right? Or not going off in the spirit, right? Because you got of course what happened with the guy Alazar, also known as Gorilla Hebrew, and he pretty much left the faith, whether he want to admit it or not. He basically said, he's denouncing, being a Hebrew Israelite, which, a lot has came to the light about this guy, about, what he's been doing, about, the wickedness, he's been doing behind the scenes, in which, brothers, from GMS, has been warning about this guy. Right, has been warning, telling our people that this guy ain't right. All right, he's not in the right spirit. All right, he constantly, does things to go off. All right, and here it is, with the biggest scandal, the pagan situation. Ever since that situation came out, man, he's pretty much been on a downward spiral ever since. All right. But you see, this is why, you got to be sincere and you got to fear the Lord. All right. You got to be humble, and being in the truth for the right reason. All right. And you got to be on fire in the spirit. All right. You can't go off in the spirit. It's not just about, so-called keeping the written commandments, because you could still go off in the spirit. All right, you doing things like having going to a strip club to the Passover, man. You going the hell off, man. All right, no point blank, it don't matter what it's, you going the hell off, man. All right. So it's things like that, and the guy never corrected his behavior, right? He was proud, always going against, the apostles and elders who taught him this truth, right? Because the guy was formerly a member of GMS, all right? And, he's disrespected the elders and apostles, that's giving him this truth, all right? And you see what's happened. All right, everything that this guy has been doing, everything that this guy is really about, man, it's come to light. And that brings me to my first scripture, Luke 12:2. It say, "For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known." All right, and that's why you got to be sincere. All right, if you just being a nigga outside the truth, you're not truly transformed. All right. You're going to be exposed. All right. Verse 3, "Therefore, whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light, and that which ye have spoken in the air in closets shall be proclaimed upon the housetops." And everybody know about that dude's business, man. All right. And that was supposed to be really, supposed to be between him and his wives or whatever. All right. But, the Lord allowed that information to be revealed, upon everywhere, man. Everybody knows about what this dude is about now. What this dude got going on. He really, wants to, rebrand himself or whatever, because he know that that's the only way for that people to take him serious again. Because really his weight, his word holds no more weight. All right. People gave him the benefit of the doubt, All right, people had him going on these different platforms. All right, thinking that he was a man of the Lord, but now we see him for what he truly is. Okay. Matthew 6:24 say, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve Yahweh and Mammon. And that's all this guy was about, man. Money. All right. Making merchandise out of the truth. All right. Monetizing videos. All right. He had a hustle on top of a hustle. He was basically about hustling the truth. All right. Whatever money he was getting, from tithe money, the creating clothing brands that involve the truth, things like that, whatever he could make money off of, that's really what the guy was about, man. Buying all these different things and showing that he got it, showing that he got the money, all this other stuff. All right, but the scriptures go into, you cannot serve Yahweh and Mammon. All right, because you got to choose one or the other. All right. The scriptures go into the love of money is the root of all evil. You see? And at the end of the day, we all need money, right? Money is a defense. All right. But, it's a balance. All right. Whenever, you making money, getting to the bag is interfering with your walk in this truth. All right. You're going to have to choose. All right. Because you can't have both. What happens is, these guys, they see there's money to be made in the truth. And, it becomes less about, edification, less about Yahushua, making his return. It's more about, debates and, having this, crazy title, clickbait title for you to click on. All right. And not about edification, drawing the elect, going into the prophecies, right? This was the same guy who said, we may have another 1,000 years, man. That just goes to show you his mindset. All right, that guy wants to stay in Babylon, man. All right. We hasten in the day of the Lord's coming, and we know that it's soon. All right, and that's through the Spirit. We're not even entertaining, the thought that, it could take the Lord another 1,000 years, man. Nah, man, we know that, the time is shortening, right, for the elect's sake. All right. Let's get another scripture. 1 John 2:19, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would no doubt have continued with us, but they went out, that they might be made manifest, that they were not all of us. All right, you see? And, this guy has pretty much admitted that, he's been the same nigga, right, since he was 9 years old, being a gang banger, Crip, whatever you want to call it. So this guy really wasn't, really hasn't, renewed his mind. All right. You can't be in the truth and kind of have a worldly persona. You can't be in the truth and cling on to worldly shit, carnal shit. Being a gangster, being a gang member. All right. Bringing a rap into the truth, right? With certain things that you want to stay away from. All right, because they have nothing to do with edification. All right, they have nothing to do with being a man of the Lord. Okay. If that was a part of your lifestyle before you was in the truth, man, you wanna get away from that. You wanna stay away from that. You know, you want to stay away from them, that type of look, them type of people. All right. But you got certain guys who want to, you know, look good in the eyes of the world. All right. You know, twist scriptures or sugarcoat certain scriptures, you know, in order to appease the world, to appease women. You know, we're not that type of camp. All right. You know, everything that we do, all right, you know, we is to please Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, to serve Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. All right. And in truth and sincerity, you know. Because if you're not sincere, man, you know, if you're not truly a man of the Lord is going to expose that. You know, we in the heavy sifting period, man. You know, and if I'm not mistaken, you know, that whole thing that came out, you know, the big thing that came out about that guy Al-Azhar did come out around the time of the Passover. You see. So the Lord is sifting, you know, and showing, you know, pretty much revealing, you know, who he's really dealing with. All right, because the men of GMS, all right, we haven't changed up the doctrine, you know, every year. All right, it's been the same. All right, you know, we're not known to want or to be a hustling camp. You know, we don't monetize the videos, to put our cash apps in every video, you know, make merchandise out of the truth. All right, you know, and these different guys who do it, it keeps waxing worse and worse. You see, it's the book of Romans 12, and we can start at 1. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Yahweh, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto Yahweh, which is your reasonable service. You know, and you know, that's going out into the highways and hedges. All right, you know, and preaching. You know, because we know that the Lord has made it to where, you know, the truth, being in the truth, knowing that you were Israelite, you know, actually, you know, doing what you can, you know, to please the Lord. All right, staying following the law, such as the commandments to the best of your ability. That doesn't align with, you know, what this world believes. All right, and you make yourself a target. You know. You make yourself, you know, you stand out, you know, and people are against you, you see. But, you know, this guy pretty much, you know, and from the looks of it, you know, he hasn't really been out in the highways and hedges, you know. You know, you can't just be a prophet, you know. A prophet ain't a temporary thing, all right. You know, you go out into the highways and hedges and you're preaching. You doing that until the Lord come back. All right. You don't just do it and then you step away. All right. Because, you know, whatever may happen, you get a rebuke or you know, just whatever the case may be. That's not how it works, man. All right. In verse 2 it says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of Yahweh. And you got to be renewed, man. If you still on the mindset, oh, I'm a Crip, you know, throwing up gang signs and in a video, all right, you know, you're not really renewed, man. You bringing that nigga shit into the truth, which that has no place in the truth, man. All right, that's not the spirit of the Lord. All right, that's not the spirit that Yahushua was coming in. All right. You know, you gotta flee from that shit, man. All right. But you know, that's pretty much the point. That's pretty much the lesson. Man, Lord will know it's edifying. So with that, I'd like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Barak HaKodash.